Hi and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Authoritas Tea Time SEO. I'm SEO Joe Blogs, and I'm joined here by Kerry Shepherd. So today we've got a special edition for you all today. As you're aware, Tea Time SEO is a chance really for everyone to, have a break, maybe grab yourself a cup of coffee or tea, maybe some cake, and connect with others and learn something new. So we started this on March the 30th, and we started it with Helen Pollitt. I had met Helen before we all before when we did all offline conferences, and Helen opened up the Tea Time SEO for us. And now she is closing our daily sessions because we'll be doing this now on Mondays and Thursdays in June. So thank you very much, Helen, for coming today. We're going to have a slightly longer Q&A session, so please add your questions to the chat. And thank you very much, everyone, for coming and who's been a regular. Thank you, Andy and Christina, and also Azim, hello, and Charlotte, Chatham House, and Tamara, and everyone else that's not logged in. So over to you, Helen.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Joe. I am in control of the slides right now, so let's just hope this works. It's been a fairly difficult week for me in terms of technology, so probably expecting the internet to go at the very least, but more likely my laptop to explode in my face. So let's just see how it goes. I am talking to you today. This is a blurb about me. Oh, look, fascinating. I almost wore that top today, so I'm glad I didn't. We are talking about Google Analytics. One of my most favorite subjects. I had originally thought that I was going to choose one report within Google Analytics to talk about in depth, but instead I chose three because it's been a long, exhausting week and I have decision fatigue. So I couldn't narrow it down any further than three, but I have got three really good reports to talk to you about today. So starting with the RealTime Report. Now, the RealTime Report is just fun, because it's the only report in Google Analytics that's actually instantaneous. Otherwise, if you want data, you are having to wait about 24 hours, especially if you have the free version of Google Analytics. So if you make a change, you kind of have to wait a whole day to see what the result is, but not with real-time reports. The real-time report is almost instantaneous within a few seconds. So if you have launched a campaign, for instance, and you're waiting to see if it's gone viral, you can see it instantaneously. You don't have to wait. Now, from an SEO perspective, the real-time report really comes in handy when you're looking at Google Analytics debugging. For reasons unknown, Google Analytics setup always seems to fall to the SEOs to do. At least in my experience, it always has. So it's really handy when you are looking at how you set up your Google Analytics just to make sure that data is tracking correctly. So, for instance, if you are looking at your Google Analytics setup following a migration, you can quickly see whether your GA tags are actually firing correctly and data is pulling through to Google Analytics. You don't have to wait 24 hours after your website's launched to see whether the tracking's working okay. And you can also do things like check to see whether any UTM codes that you've set up are actually pulling in the data in a way that you would expect them to. The last thing you want is to set up a UTM code on a campaign and for that information to be pulling through incorrectly into Google Analytics, because if you're having to wait 24 hours to see, then by the time you figured it out, then you've actually got a lot of data that's pulled in incorrectly. So using the real-time report is a good way to quickly check that kind of Google Analytics setup. Also, if you're doing things like setting up filters, so trying to filter out your own office IP address, or what was an office? I feel like I went to one of those many, many moons ago. What I meant to say is if you're trying to filter out your spare bedroom IP address, then you can check to see whether it's actually filtering out correctly in Google Analytics just by checking in the real-time report. So it's just much more instantaneous than the rest of the reports in Google Analytics. Also, it does help if you're looking to see whether a campaign that you've launched recently is actually meeting the sorts of geo-targeting requirements that you had of it, because you can see quickly whether people are opening your email campaign or visiting your website from various different locations in the world. And it gives you that quick opportunity to just reconfigure stuff and make things targeting a lot more narrow if that's what you need to do. So Moving on from the real-time report, we're going to look at site search because we're SEOs and we love anything that has the word search in it. So the site search report is really useful for helping you determine if your website is hot garbage, because essentially it is linked up to any sort of internal search functionality that you might have on your website. So if, for instance, you have a free text box that allows someone to type something in and it brings them through to a search results page, you can hook up that free text box to pull into Google Analytics so you know exactly what text was put into it. And in that, because of that, it helps you to understand what people are having to search for on your website that they just can't find through your navigation. And that's what I mean by hot garbage, because if people are having to repeatedly type in the same keyword to find information that they're looking for, then they obviously can't find it through whatever navigation system you have. So this is an example of a highly redacted site search report from one of my clients. In fact, I've taken out all of the useful information. So it's essentially just grey boxes. But what it does show you is, in their instance, they had a lot of products that they offer being searched for repeatedly through their site search. So that allowed me to see that actually something was going wrong in terms of their navigation, because people weren't able to find this particular product through the navigation. They were having to resort to using a site search. And all of us know that actually using a site search is terrible, and one of the last things you want to do before you actually exit a website. So the fact that they're having to resort to using the site search meant that the navigation just wasn't fulfilling their needs. And something else that you can see in the site search report is actually where on the website the site search was actually carried out. So if you have the site search functionality within, say, the navigation bar of your website, it means that you can access it from whatever page you're on. So that means you can start to look at any correlations between the pages that people are searching from and the keywords that they're searching with. That way you can start to see, actually, if someone is always searching for product A when they're on the homepage, it probably means you need a more prominent link to product A from the homepage. It helps you just really fine-tune that navigation, and helps you to identify if there's any particular issues with the navigation system. And also, you can look to see what proportion of visits to a website actually included a site search within them. And if that's a very high proportion, then essentially your website navigation is rubbish and you really need to look into that. So, final report we're going to look at now, assisted conversions. Now, this is really useful for really any channel marketer, but we're going to talk about it from an SEO perspective, because assisted conversions helps you to prove the worth of your SEO work. We tend to, by default, look at goal conversions from the perspective of whichever channel was the last channel to bring someone to the website before they converted. It's called last click attribution. And that's fine, except that it kind of misses out all of the worth of the channels that contributed to that conversion. So if someone comes to your website having clicked on an organic search listing, they potter around on your website for a bit and then they leave, and they come back a day later having clicked on a PPC ad, and then they convert, then that PPC ad is given all of the glory for that conversion. Whereas actually they very first found out about your website from an organic search result. So it's not fair that organic doesn't get to share in a bit of that glory. So the assisted conversions report essentially allows you to see what value different channels have in terms of contributing to overall goals. So you can see in this report, for instance, there's an actual monetary value assigned to different channels, depending on whether they had the last click before the person converted, or whether they were somewhere within that conversion journey of someone coming to the website, leaving, coming back to the website, leaving, coming to the website again, and then converting. So it's a really good way of you actually saying, okay, so organic perhaps didn't have that many goal completions this month, but look at all of the goals, that completions that it was involved in some stage. And depending on what type of website you have and what type of business you have, you might actually be really interested in those either first click channels that brought people to the website the very first time they found out about the website, or the assisted conversions, because it might be, for instance, if you have a very long lead time before someone visits your website, they might not actually convert for a few months. Then it becomes really useful to know which channels are keeping that relationship going between the time they first came across your brand and your website and the time they actually converted on it. So assisted conversions is probably one of the most overlooked reports, but can be really, really good in you proving the worth of organic traffic to your site and ultimately being able to keep your organic search budgets. So that was almost exactly 10 minutes, I believe. So any questions?
Yes, that was we've got lots of comments. So Charlotte's saying this is very useful. It is very useful. I just wanted to clarify some things for the audience. So around assisted conversions, do you need to set this report up, or should be in your analytics, correct?
It should just be in your analytics. So it's right at the very, very bottom of analytics, which I think is probably why it gets overlooked the most, because you have to scroll and then scroll again. But yes, it should be there already.
Okay. And then just to confirm for the audience as well, in terms of the assisted conversion, so let's say they went from SEO, then PPC, then they went to social. Social gets that click. So this is over that cookie window. So the cookie period of 30 days, correct?
Yes, so it's called the look back window, but yes, it's whatever that period is set for.
Okay, great. And actually, we just got one from Azim. He said, something that's bugged me before, is there any way that you found out that you can measure the length of time between two channels in that report?
Ooh, that is a really good question. Off the top of my head, it's not something that I've done before, but there is a report in Google Analytics that lets you look at the time between someone coming to a website and converting. So there might be something you can do there, potentially looking at secondary dimensions, but it's not something I've done before, but it's definitely worth looking into.
Okay. And I just have one more question, then I'll pass over to Carrie to check the chat, and we've got a few more coming through. So just we're on the topic of conversions here, the conversion report. What would be the difference between a goal and an event? And maybe you can mention the pro and cons.
That's a good question. So a goal essentially is something that is triggered if you meet some conditions. So a goal can be set up based on an event, which makes it a bit confusing. It can also be triggered if someone reaches a particular page, or they are on the site for a certain duration of time, or if they have visited a certain number of pages. So there's very strict types of goals that could be set up. But if you meet that criteria, that's when the goal triggers. An event, on the other hand, is essentially any interaction on the website that you have tagged up. So it's a lot more customizable. There's a lot more different types of events that you can create. Essentially, to put it very plainly, if you can isolate it within the code and you can kind of select it as a thing, then you can probably set it up as an event. And the way that those trigger can be based on various different variables. So goals can be based on events. You can't base an event on a goal, if that makes sense. So events can feed into a goal. Goals, I say, are pretty useful because there's just a lot more information you can get from them. So you can do things like assign a value to a goal. So if a goal is completed, it's probably worth this amount for you. So for instance, if you have, I don't know, maybe you're an education provider and your courses cost £1,000 to sign onto, you can assign someone applying for that course as an £1,000 value. So the goal can, every time it's triggered, essentially suggests that you have got £1,000. Whereas with events, it's a bit different. You can't quite assign it in that way. There's also more that you can do in Google Analytics in terms of drilling down into those goals. So you can look at goal funnels. So you can see whereabouts in the goal setup someone potentially has given up. So say you have a form that has 3 or 4 steps to it, and you have to fill in a bit and click next and fill in a bit and click next. You can start to see where in that process people have just given up the will to live and have just exited the form and stopped filling it in. So it helps you kind of drill down into what people are doing as part of that KPI, that conversion, a bit more.
Wow, that was great. I was just taking a few notes. Thank you very much, Helen. Loads of insight there. I'll pass over to Karen now. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have a question from Nadia. She says she hasn't got any data on site search overview. Is that something that needs to be set up? Yeah,
it is. So first things first, you actually have to have site search functionality on your website. And I know that sounds obvious, but it's not unless you've actually looked for it and you've determined you do have that free text field within your website. But it is quite simple to set up. You essentially need to be able to isolate the string that is provided when someone completes the search within your website. But Google Analytics does allow you to just kind of set it up quite easily, and it will run through what you need to provide. Off the top of my head, I think you go to settings, and then there will be either in the view or the property the ability to set up site search and to link those two things up. But it doesn't require you adding any additional code or getting a developer involved or anything like that.
Great, thank you. So why does some traffic end up in organic, like Instagram?
So normally it's because someone somewhere along the lines has messed up with a UTM code. I've not seen Instagram pulling through to organic traffic myself, but not a lot of my clients use Instagram. But I would imagine that's just where someone's used the UTM code and potentially selected the medium as organic because maybe it was an organic Instagram post rather than a paid Instagram post. But it tends to be that someone's used a UTM code, not quite understood what each of the different fields means, and as a result, it's pulling through to Google Analytics incorrectly. But again, that's a good reason to use real-time reports because you can kind of check your UTM codes before you set them live.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's really useful. I have another question. Why do some keywords appear in organic?
This is, so a long time ago, Google used to show all of the keywords in Google Analytics, and life was good and life was fair. And then, for reasons unknown, Google decided to take that away from us. It was supposed to only be a small percentage of keywords would be lost and replaced with not provided. The idea being that it was a security thing. So if you were using Google SSL search, so secure search, Google would not then provide that keyword data that you'd entered into the search to the publisher whose website it was that you landed on. Which is why originally they said it was only going to be like 10 to 20% of your keywords would get lost. Well, we know that's not at all close to accurate, unfortunately. You're losing about 90% of your keywords. Why that remaining 10% is there, I don't actually know, because I can't think of any instance where Google would allow you to search on an insecure search anymore. So my answer is, I don't know. But what I can say is that remaining keyword data is probably not going to be incredibly useful to you because it's such a small sample of what people are searching. And a lot of the time it's brand search that you'll see in the search report. So again, it's not the most useful. I would tend to look at the Google Search Console report within Google Analytics if you want some more accurate keyword data for your organic traffic.
Okay, thank you. We have another question about custom alerts. So what are custom alerts and what do you use them for?
So custom alerts are a really nice way of Google Analytics basically scaring you. Because if you set up a custom alert, Google will take the criteria that you've told it to use and will send you an email to tell you that those criteria have been met. So it might be something like on a given day. So say you set your alert to be daily. If you have less than 10 goal completions on your website. So if you're used to getting, I don't know, hundreds of goal completions on your website every day and Google only records 10, then it will send you an email to say only 10 or fewer than 10 goal conversions were recorded on your website today. And it's just a little alert for you to then go and check your Google Analytics account. So it's based on the criteria that you set. So there's no sort of standard ones that come pre-programmed. You have to select and build the alert yourself. The sorts of things I would use it for would be traffic normally. So if my traffic on the site goes to 0, then I will get a custom alert sent through to me saying traffic to the site has been 0. And then I know to go and check to see whether the Google Analytics tracking is still working on the website, because it could be that it's been removed through the latest development update, for instance. So it tends to be, I use it for alerting me to potential issues with the Google Analytics tracking. But it can be very good if you have particular KPIs that you want to be notified about if they exceed a particular amount or if they go below a particular amount. It's just a way of essentially stopping you from having to check your Google Analytics every single day for a particular KPI that you're tracking.
Great, thank you. Jo, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I have a couple. Just really, first of all, when you're taking on a new client, how long would you maybe allocate for either 1, reviewing their Google Analytics, or 2, they don't have it, setting that up?
Again, it depends. I hate saying that now. It feels so cliche. but it does. It depends on the type of website it is. E-commerce, for instance, might require a little bit more configuration than a new site. If it's a new setup, then I'm getting quite quick at those now, so I wouldn't actually allocate more than a couple of hours, again, depending on how much traffic they're likely to get in, because then I want to start looking at the common misattribution of data that often comes into Google Analytics and trying to kind of cut that off and properly assign it before it starts coming in incorrectly. If they have a lot of offices that need IP filters out, that sort of thing, that might take more time. Usually when I am auditing Google Analytics setup, then I like to assign a lot of time if I haven't had a chance to kind of skim through the account already, because it's not really until you start digging into it, you start to see the true mess that might well have been set up beforehand. So I don't like to take a Google Analytics audit lightly, because you might find that you actually uncover a bit of a hornet's nest and there's a lot of work that needs to be done to clean up.
So would you say that there's like, is there like 5 key things that you look at in analytics?
I tend to look at things like, if it's an account that's already in existence and I'm taking it on, I'm inheriting it, I will look at things like filtering, because that gives me an idea into what potential issues they've had in the past with things like maybe bot traffic or issues along those lines. Also what they are or aren't filtering out in terms of their own traffic. So do they have offices that I know about that aren't being filtered out? A lot of what I'm doing at the moment when I'm taking on new accounts is actually asking for home IP addresses where people are happy to give those and applicable laws allow it, so that I can make sure that any traffic from people's home offices is being filtered out. Also things like attribution channels. So if they've been running for a long time and I'm seeing a lot of traffic coming into that other category of traffic, then I know that something's probably gone wrong there with some tracking somewhere along the line. So I will dig into that other channel quite a lot and see where that traffic is actually coming from, so it can be properly attributed. Normally it's due to UTM codes that have been set up on a link that aren't pulling in correctly, haven't been set up properly. So then it's often a case of trying to educate the client as to how to set up a UTM code correctly. But those are normally the first 2 places I'll look. And then just generally having a bit of a poke around in the Google Analytics account, because you don't quite know what you might come up with, and you'll start to notice patterns, you'll start to notice what might potentially be issues. But then also looking at things like, have they set up everything that needs to be set up? So have they linked their Google Ads account? Have they linked their Search Console account? That sort of thing.
That's great. Thank you very much, Helen. Has anyone else got any questions for Helen? I think everyone maybe just be overwhelmed by all the
so much data.
So much data. So just to confirm, some of the top reports that you recommend is the assisted conversions, and the I don't have this. You are the master. So
I am the master of the slides. I am. Let me just site search.
Site search and real-time report. Those are great. Well, thank you, Helen. We've had loads of insights from you, and you were actually on our first Tea Time SEO, March 30th, and now we've had over 100 speakers take part. We've had 42 sessions, so that's been fantastic, and we've got loads of tips from everyone as well, and we've had a great audience that has been coming back, and we're still going to have, of course, Tea Time SEO. We've actually got it for coming up on Monday next week. We've actually got a session around managing the SEO process. So on Monday, actually, it's going to be about managing that SEO process in agency side. We have Adam and Justina. And then on Thursday, actually, we have managing that SEO process in-house. And that's going to be with Arij, Alina, and Orit. So it'll be a very good week about how you could actually manage your SEO, whether you're client side or agency side. So I just want to say thanks very much, everyone, for coming. Thanks, Andy, Vani, Nadia, Azim, Charlotte, Lawrence, Christina, Tamara, Andy. Thank you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you on Monday at 4 p.m. where you can learn more about managing the SEO process if you're an agency. And thank you once again, Helen, for tuning in at Tea Time SEO, and also for giving up your time at Tea Time SEO, both one of the first session that we had when you didn't know anything about Tea Time, and our last of our daily sessions. So appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me back. That's awesome.
Of course, and hope to see you in an offline event sometime soon. So we'll see all of you on Monday. Have a really good, nice, and chillaxing weekend. Thank you very much.